Hello to all you Mays and Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. On today's show, we have a Mets playoff victory to discuss. The Bats came alive in Milwaukee. I'll break that down in the first segment. Second segment, we're going to talk about the pitching in this game. Luis Severino didn't have his best stuff, but he found a way. And the Brewers, they really went deep into that bullpen. I want to talk about the strategy there between these two rookie managers. Then in the final segment, I want to discuss where the Mets are now after these last couple victories. Is this a team that is believing in themselves to potentially not just win this series, but win a couple more after that? We're going to go through it all. Before we do, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, first things first, if you're watching on YouTube, it is audio only today because I'm still working through a move. I had the bright idea to move, and it was supposed to be on Monday because there wasn't going to be baseball play. It would have given me 24 hours to figure it all out, figure out a new office here. How's the sound going to bounce off the walls? Can I get my shot right? The lighting so I can talk on YouTube, all of it. And then, the Mets had to play that doubleheader, so I decided, all right, let's push it back a day. The Mets might not play until 7 o'clock. If they do advance, I'll just worry about it. Then I can get it all done. Unfortunately, when I got here, I was unable to get the Wi-Fi working for whatever reason, so I got to wait for a tech to come out. I think I'll be back on camera for Thursday's show. So just wanted to let you all know about that. And also, without Wi-Fi, I had to watch this game on my phone in the beginning, and I was watching like standard def. I guess my cell service isn't great here, so I'm watching. I can hear the game. I can see the players, but they're just, blurry. It's like back in the old days. So I decided to go out, grab some dinner with my wife, go to a sports bar so I could watch the game. And I got there when it all really got good because I saw all the runs the Mets scored at that bar and had myself one heck of a night. The game did get off to a rocky start, though. I guess it's because I was in standard def. I don't know. The Mets went down in order in the first inning, and Luis Severino early did not look like he was going to go very deep in this game. He coughed up 2 runs in the first inning, allowing 3 hits before he recorded an out. And there was a circumstance here where Severino was facing Rhys Hoskins with 1 run already in and the bases loaded. And I know personally I had flashbacks to Sean Manaea's start last week where Rhys Hoskins took him deep for a grand slam. And I had every expectation that we could see Hoskins prove to be a Mets killer once again. But in this case, Severino just plunked him. That did drive in a run, but he was able to wiggle out of the jam. And in the second inning, right after that, the Mets got right back into this game. Mark Vientos led things off with a base hit. Pete Alonso drew a walk. Jesse Winker then comes up. But I think a lot of us, when we saw Jesse Winker in the lineup today, we were thinking, why? Why go back to Winker? Guy has not been hitting for weeks now. He's also been nursing a back injury, so it didn't make a ton of sense until you found out the career numbers for Jesse Winker against Freddie Peralta, which were really good. I think it was like 6 for 18 with 2 home runs. So they go with Winker in the DH spot, and this is one of those examples how Carlos Mendoza was pushing all the right buttons in this game. Jesse Winker comes through with a huge hit and also a great at-bat leading up to the hit. Works the count full, fouls off a couple pitches to extend it. 8th pitch of the at-bat, he gets a fastball low and away that he can handle, and he actually just gets a barrel on it and rips it over Rhys Hoskins' head into the right field corner. That scores 2, and Jesse Winker ends up on third base with an RBI triple. You might remember Jesse Winker was with the Brewers last year and had a terrible time. Him and Willy Adames were jawing at each other. Nice to see a little bit of a rivalry brewing here between these two teams. And the Mets were able to score another run there as Winker was driven in by Starling Marte, who got him home with the sacrifice fly. So all of a sudden, the Mets turned a 2-0 deficit into a 3-2 lead. And Luis Severino settled in a little bit after that rough first inning. Second inning, he works around a double, gets out of it. Third inning, 2 runners end up on base. He gets out of it with an inning-ending double play. But in the fourth inning, the Brewers were able to mount another rally. Severino gave up a leadoff double, then a couple of hits after he got a strikeout against the second batter. Ultimately, he blows the lead, gives up 2 runs, and the Brewers are sitting ahead by a score of 4-3. Now, going into the fifth inning, Pat Murphy made a decision that was a little bit surprising. He went to his bullpen, and we could talk about that a little bit more in the next segment, but Freddie Peralta is the one starting pitcher the Brewers have that you look at and say, man, that's a guy that they can count on. That's a guy that can go deep into a game, that can win you a playoff game. And he took him out of it. And the bullpen comes in, and the Mets just feasted on Joel Payamps and Aaron Ashby. Starling Marte leads things off and nearly hits a home run. It was robbed by Jackson Chourio. Marte's out. But then, next batter, Tyrone Taylor rips a line drive Chourio's way. This one he couldn't measure, hits off his glove. Tyrone Taylor ends up on second base with a double. Francisco Alvarez flew out to make it 2 outs in the inning, but Francisco Lindor drew a walk to extend it for Jose Iglesias, who continues to come through in these spots. He ripped one that Rhys Hoskins made a great diving stop on, but Iglesias always booking it down the line, ends up beating the throw by diving into first base. The pitcher catches the ball, and his foot on the way to first just ends up never getting there because Iglesias' dive takes him right into the pitcher, and that allows him to beat the play, and a run comes in to score, tying the game. Iglesias is fired up. The Mets are fired up, and they just kept hitting. Brandon Nimmo gets a base hit to load the bases. Mark Vientos playing in his first playoff game, although, Monday sort of felt like some playoff games. Vientos comes through with a single of his own to drive in 2. They intentionally walked Pete Alonso at first base, was made open with a wild pitch. Brings up Jesse Winker's spot in the lineup. At this point, Aaron Ashby is pitching. And with the lefty on the mound, the Mets, they counter. They go to J.D. Martinez for the left-on-right matchup. J.D. gets the job done. He gets a base hit. All of a sudden, the New York Mets have an 8-4 lead, and they never let it up from there. You look at how the Mets got to the victory today. They were actually out-hit. Brewers got 8 hits, Mets got 7. But a great approach top to bottom. The Mets drew 5 walks compared to just 2 from the Brewers. And here's the big stat of the day. The New York Mets were 5 for 7 with runners in scoring position. The Brewers were 4 for 13, which honestly, a lot of times, that's not horrible to go 4 for 13. But in this instance, when the Mets were getting those runners in pretty much any time they had a chance, it was not enough. And the Mets were able to hang on to this victory in convincing fashion. And now they are really riding some momentum. Can they carry that into Game 2? I want to talk about that in just a minute. We also got to spend a little more time on Luis Severino's fantastic pitcher performance. But before we get to any of it, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, do live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, that is $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You watch the winnings roll in. Maybe you like Sean Manaea in this matchup. I think he's going to bounce back against the Brewers after having a rough start against them his last time out. Look into strikeouts. Go more there. You can get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today, where you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So you can turn $10 into $1,000. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the pitching in this game. Freddie Peralta really didn't get a chance because he wasn't bad. He allowed 2 hits, retired 9 straight batters at the end of his outing. Of course, he gave up those first 3 runs, but Freddie Peralta could have settled in. He sort of did. He got through the 3rd and the 4th inning without allowing a base runner, and he was able to get out of that jam without it being too detrimental in the 2nd inning. Peralta was a guy that I thought was going to go 6 or 7 in this game, but instead, that ends up being Luis Severino. And Severino also did not have his best stuff. Gave up 8 hits, walked 2, only struck out 3. But this was the type of Luis Severino start that we've grown accustomed to during the season, where this guy's going to just find his way to eat up innings for you, and that is so valuable to a team, especially when you're hitting, because now, all of a sudden, you have the confidence to let that pitcher stay out there, keep on throwing, try to get that extra inning. And for the Mets, a team that was just pushed to the brink with the 8-10 innings and everything it took to make it into the dance, now you get some time to rest a little bit. You have some time to get Phil Maton an extra day instead of running him into the ground, to still keep Reed Garrett out of the fold a little bit, to give Edwin Diaz a huge day off. So Severino getting through 6 was a really big part of this game and could carry over to tomorrow. Also, Jose Buda was lights out. Absolutely lights out. 2 perfect innings. He struck out 3. Final 2 to cap off the 8th inning. He was just electric. I sort of wanted to see him get that 3-inning save. But instead, Carlos Mendoza goes to Ryan Stanek and he gets the job done, which theoretically could allow Jose Buda to pitch in a Game 3 if necessary. But hopefully, it's not necessary, because Game 2, the Mets have a clear pitching advantage, although these 2 guys did square off last Friday, and it did go in Frankie Montas' favor. I just think Sean Manaea is flatly better than Frankie Montas, and to get Manaea now on full rest with a team that is just hitting the ground running right behind him, I feel like we're going to see the best of Sean Manaea in this one, and he might just be able to pitch the Mets into the next round. But you look at what's around him, and having a Maton to go to, having potentially Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, the Mets don't need Sean Manaea to go 8-9 innings, get through 6 with the lead, pass it off to the bullpen just like Luis Severino did today. And the New York Mets are looking really, really good for a chance to continue to shock the world. So we'll see if they're able to build off of this momentum and keep it going. That's definitely something that you have to wonder with this Mets team about, just because they can be a little bit hot and cold. They could get stagnant. Just doesn't feel like it, though. It feels like the Mets have found something. They've found their identity again. They remember all of the winning habits they built over months and months and months of really good baseball. And all of a sudden, they're playing with a certain level of swagger that just has not been there for the past week, for sure, before Sunday against the Brewers, and then, of course, the comeback on Monday. There was doubt. There had to be, because the Mets were looking like a team that was going to blow this thing. Now that they haven't done that, I think it just gives them such a mental edge moving forward, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. We're going to discuss how the Mets' turn of events here has made them an even more dangerous team that can not only win a wild card round, but potentially go beyond that and, I don't know, beat, say, the Phillies? We're going to talk about all that in just a minute. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Mets is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities. And with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city. Maybe you want to get ahead of it. Maybe you want to say, all right, the Mets are going to advance. You want to be part of that. You can head to Booking.com, book your stay, because the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or on the Booking.com app. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. So now the New York Mets are one win away from the NLDS, where they would square off against the Philadelphia Phillies, and it's hard not to get excited about that prospect. This is a Mets team that played so tight when they had to clinch, and I think it was the demons of Mets vs. Braves. It's that simple. Not only is it 2022 all over again when it came to what that series was going to be heading into the week, where it's 3 games in Atlanta and you have a 2-game lead in the division, just win one. That was always the thing, right? It was win one and you're sitting in a good spot. Well, they eventually did win that one, but there was first, after a devastating loss in game 1 of the series, there was travel, there was games canceled, there was all these things. And the Mets had to once again go up against the Atlanta Braves. And I think playing the Brewers as bad as they did, I think that was almost... I'm not going to credit how well the Brewers played to the Atlanta Braves, but I will say that to a certain extent the Mets played as poorly as they did in that series because of the Atlanta Braves. And that fear, okay, there's a fear there, and no one's going to admit to it, but there's a fear of it being embarrassed. There's a fear of having what has been an unbelievable regular season for the New York Mets, and to see that potentially dissipate, very quickly in a 3-game set in Atlanta. Those guys had to really try to ignore that and just get back down to the process. And I think it all ended up working out, where the Mets went through just immense struggles, but came out on the other side of it. And not only that, it wasn't just all right, we had a couple guys run into homers, we're going to win this game. It was, no, backs against the wall, every single pitch matters, 2 teams desperately vying for a playoff spot, and a chance for the Mets to finally get one up on the Atlanta Braves, who are always just a little bit ahead of the Mets. Oh, the Mets are scouting well, drafting well. Well, the Braves have a better farm system. Oh, the Mets made some signings this offseason. Luis Severino, Shamanai, whatever it is. Well, the Braves just made a trade to pick up Chris Sale from the Red Sox. We don't know how that's going to go. If he's healthy, he could be okay, but is he ever healthy? Well, when he goes to the Braves, he's going to be healthy. My point is, there is a long-standing notion between the Braves, the Mets, and Major League Baseball at large about what these teams are supposed to be, what they're supposed to represent. And I think that you can almost see that in how that was covered, the games on Monday, where the Braves were expected to win that game 2. If the Mets had lost game 1, would they have been expected to win game 2? Probably not. And that's just how people view these teams. Everyone outside of those who have believed in this team from the beginning, everyone could stand up and say, all right, yep, this is where the Mets collapse because LOL Mets, they always do. And as much as a player can say that doesn't matter, they'll shut out the noise. David Stearns talked about it today. You guys make so much of things that we don't care about it in the clubhouse that aren't discussed. That I don't buy. Okay, guys hear everything. They say whatever comes to their mind. If someone is getting criticized, the players are going to know about it, and they can try to shut it out, but that's a lot easier said than done. So with that mounting pressure, the Mets went behind in that game on Monday and battled back and didn't just take it once, they took it twice. That was the weight of the world coming off their shoulders. And now it's all gravy, and they're going to push back on that. They're going to say, well, we're here. Why not go for a run? And I absolutely hope that they do. But you can't tell me that the fact that the fan base has been satisfied, the fan base is not going to be upset at this team for losing in the playoffs. I mean, if they blow a lead, maybe, but ultimately a large portion of the fan base is going to end this season and say, you know what? The 2024 Mets were a lot of fun, and they had my heart racing, they had my heart going up and down all year long, but at the end of the day, they entertained, and they got somewhere that no one expected they would be in the postseason. So I really think that this has just been an interesting turn of events for the New York Mets, where now all of a sudden you might just see the best version of Mets baseball they can put together. And if they get that, if they get the contributions from the Martes, the Winkers, the JD Martinez's, if they can get standout pitching performances from Tyler McGill when they need it, Jose Quintana in a pinch, all of a sudden the Mets really can go on a run here. And I think you're seeing the steady contributions up and down the lineup that are typical of a team that is capable of going on a deep playoff run. And they're getting some solid starting pitching. Can that continue? Is the bullpen going to blow it at some point? These are obviously all questions that will be answered. But right now, as you're going to Game 2 of the wild card round, the New York Mets have a 1-0 lead. They've won 2 incredible games here between Monday's doubleheader and then this one to fall behind, come back, and end up putting it away. The Mets are showing the fortitude that tells me that they can make a deep run in October and continue to shock the world. And I will be with you every step of the way. Apologize for a little bit of a shorter show today and one without video. Got a lot going on here, but I'm hoping that I'm a little more back to normal tomorrow and can give you a live stream after the game. Breaking down whatever happens, there is a chance the New York Mets can advance to the NLDS right now on Wednesday. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or first watch every day, not for your second watch. Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel covering everything in the world of sports. Locked On Sports Today is streaming 24/7 on YouTube.